Hey y'all, it's Ryan, and today I want to talk about the gender disparity in colloquium speakers at top universities and how selection committees can protect against gender bias in these selection processes. Because giving invited talks is part of how people in academia are evaluated, the paper I'll talk to you about today looked at who is invited as a form of gatekeeping in academia. This is really novel, and bonus, the lead author will help us to understand how to remedy this gender disparity in invited colloquium speakers. So let's hear a little bit from Dr. Nittrouer now.
My name is Dr. Christy Nittrouer, and I'm an assistant professor at the University of Houston downtown in the management department. And I'm excited to tell you a little bit about a study that I published during graduate school in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences. We were interested in investigating biases towards the selection of colloquium speakers regarding their gender.
To do this, they conducted 3 studies within this paper that built on each other in important ways to hone in on exactly what was happening with speakers at these top universities. First, they looked at archival data to identify who were the about 3,600 invited speakers at top universities in these 6 disciplines. Then they collected responses from a subset of about 200 faculty members who were in the same departments as the people who gave talks, but these faculty members did not give a colloquium talk at one of the top universities. And the authors asked these faculty members the number of colloquium talks that they declined at top universities and the extent to which they perceived it to be important to give colloquium talks. By building on the first set of data by identifying why people aren't giving colloquium talks, the authors were then able to see if women were being invited, but just declining at a higher rate for some reason. And lastly, in the third study, they contacted administrators to study the gender composition of the colloquium committees that might affect who the committee invites to actually speak at these universities.
So if I had to say one main takeaway from this paper, I would say that it's probably the figure for study 1. And a lot of people get hung up on the descriptive statistics from this project. So if you just read the descriptive statistics section, you'll see that we documented far more men who are giving colloquium talks than women. But as a good critical thinker and scientist, clearly that's potentially not the entire explanation. So we wanted to be able to control for if maybe there were just more male PhDs overall, maybe there were more male PhDs in certain fields, or maybe there were more male PhDs at senior faculty positions. So we were able to collect a data set that allowed us to control for those potential explanations and even above and beyond those potential explanations, we found that there was still a persistent gender difference to the tune of men give a talk, 1.2 talks for every talk that a woman gives. And in the second study, we investigated, is this just because women opt out? And no, we found that it wasn't. So what to do about this issue? We found that if just one more woman was on the colloquium committee, selection committee, or there was a woman chair, that this made either a marginal in the case of the committee or a significant in the case of the individual difference in terms of more women being chosen or more women giving talks.
So the takeaway from this set of studies is that men are more likely to be invited to give colloquium talks at these top 50 universities than women, regardless of their rank and across 6 different departments. However, universities that had a woman chair the selection committee had invited more women to give talks. So because of how the authors collected this data, they're also able to say that this difference is not because of women opting out of talks or not valuing talks. And in fact, the way they collected data is really important here.
It definitely speaks to sort of a methods ethos that I have, which is that working a little bit harder and putting in a little bit more elbow grease to collect data usually results in better data. So it took about a year to collect this data. It's an archival data set. And while we could have probably found some people to help us collect, use web scraping or data mining to sort of get this data faster, because we were very careful about how we collected it, we wound up with almost a completely clean data set after we were done, which made it pretty instantaneous to run the statistics immediately once data collection finished. And I have to say that's been the way that I've done a few projects now, and I really appreciate it because it means that the data that we're getting is better, and I feel more confident in it. It's more representative.
Another thing I've always admired about Dr. Nittrouer is her work ethic and perseverance, which you can see in these methods, but also behind the scenes addressing addressing criticisms of the paper in the review process?
In terms of any hurdles to the paper, well, I seem to have sort of this trend where this paper actually, it was sort of like a high risk revision. So they technically rejected it, but they said that we could submit a revision if we wanted to try to incorporate all the suggestions that the reviewers gave us. And that tends to be like, I work the problem. If that was a strength that I had, that is something that I am good at, is I have no problem putting in the amount of work it may take to sort of address criticisms or like try and fix something. And in the course of, this was a 4 revision process. So it went through 4 rounds of revision, and we had to collect at different points 2 additional sets of data.
Christy's willingness to collect extra data to make this the best paper possible is something that we can all learn from. She had no guarantee that it would be accepted for publication, but knew that collecting more data would make it a better paper regardless. And this attitude is invaluable in grad school, where we often don't have a lot of encouragement, right? Especially from reviewers. So knowing the worth of your time and data, and being open to improving your final product, or paper in this case, will only help make you more successful. That's definitely something that I've learned while looking up to Dr. Nittrouer. So big thanks to her for joining us today to talk about the importance of who is on selection committees.
My advice whenever I talk about this paper is to sort of think about where, if you have a low representation of women in your department, think about where their time is being spent. And if you're interested in improving that representation, think about being strategic about where you ask them to serve and putting them on the high impact committees like promotion and tenure, any sort of promotion advancement committee if you're thinking outside of academia, or recruitment and selection.
All right, y'all, that's all for today. Thanks for stopping by. You can support my channel by liking this video, sharing it with your friends, and clicking the subscribe button if you haven't already.